welcome to Bear Archery's Hunting 101 podcast, where hunters new and old come to learn and find inspiration from stories of hunts gone by. Everyone is welcome to enjoy the outdoor way of life, and there is no better time to start than right now. So let's head into the great outdoors with your host, Dylan Ray.
Welcome to Bear Archery's Hunting 101 podcast, as always, presented by our good friends over at ScentLok. We are getting to the heart of whitetail season, and I basically all year long live in my ScentLok. I'm a huge fan of it, and I would highly encourage you to go check it out if you have not, especially for sitting in a tree stand. I have a special guest, a buddy of mine. We met last year at the Pope and Young convention, and Mr. Laden Force. How are you, man?
Hey, man, I am doing great, Dylan. I appreciate you having me on here. It's good to see you again. It's whitetail season. It's a great time to talk about bow hunting, talk about everything that you can imagine that we enjoy this time of year.
And no better place to talk about whitetails than with North American Whitetails. So tell me what you do there at North American Whitetail and how you got there.
For sure. Well, I'm currently the publisher, which means I'm essentially the general manager of North American Whitetail, the brand. I have a couple other brands that I operate in the same capacity for, Gundog Magazine and or Gundog the brand, and then also Wildfowl. But North American Whitetail is how we made the connection and met at Pope and Young, and very involved in all three on a daily basis. Within North American Whitetail, I'm also the producer and co-host of North American Whitetail TV. So it's pretty busy schedule. And I enjoy every bit of it. Very fortunate to work here with this brand and all three brands and man, just work with great people, at those brands, whether it's, Haynes Shelton, our editor-in-chief at North American Whitetail, or Blake Garlock, our associate editor, or even our editor emeritus, Gordon Whittington, that's been with the brand for over 38 years now, right down to Callie Parmley and Skip Knowles at Gundog and Wildfowl, respectively. So it's pretty cool gig, man.
Yeah, cool. Absolutely, man. Now before we started recording, we were talking briefly about the process people go through when they kill a monster. And obviously you're on that side of things. You're on the side of things of, hey, let us publish your story. Let us put that out. We want to write that. And I am to an extent on the Pope and Young side of things, but not a tremendous amount. But you're on that side of things. And I have on two different occasions got to experience the process from a hunter's standpoint. A young man in my youth group shot a 241-inch deer. And he was still in high school, and he's all of a sudden getting phone calls about, let us buy your deer. We'll give you this. We'll give you that. We need this. We need that. And, I didn't know what to do. And a lot of people don't understand. I don't know if politics is the right word to use here, but a lot of people don't understand the intricacies that go on. Like if you kill that magnitude of animal and you want to go down the path of going down that path, there are some people that just say, no, thanks. I'm good. Yep. But if you choose to go down that path, a lot of people don't understand the intricacies of that. Like, people just think like, oh, they got awarded a new world record. Well, like I can tell you from experience, if you get awarded a new Pope and Young world record, you probably flew to a special panel, got it measured by a panel of judges, and then it went through a process with the director of records to be verified as the new world record. And then, it's a big process of coming to convention, and then our special panel in April. And it's a big process to say new world record. It's not something that's just thrown around. And so a lot of people don't understand the intricacies that go into, man, I just shot a stinking giant, and there's people wanting to publish this story. So being on that side of things, how does that even work, man? Like, what do they go through? What do they do?
They to the point of what we were talking about is it can be a lot. It can be a whole lot, and not just with, the individuals that are hoping to tell your story, like we do here at North American Whitetail, but, to the extent of those involved in the industry. And I think there's probably a lot of perception around what it means. And a world record's a lot different than a state record, but they're both equally important. And in some cases, just a top 5 deer in the area with the weapon of choice is a big deal, man. And it differs from Pope and Young to Boone and Crockett, and we'll just say for general sake, archery versus firearms, right? And in a method of take, because Pope and Young has a biennial event. Boone and Crockett has a triennial event, so their panel is every 3 years instead of every other year.
Right.
So there's a lot that can happen in that time period, and there's just a lot to it, but it can be very overwhelming. And I think that there is some perception out there that, hey, if you kill a state record, you're going to sell that deer for $100,000. And I don't think that's 100% accurate. And every once in a while, sure, we might be involved in a conversation where somebody would bring up a price that they were offered by a manufacturer, maybe in the industry, or a collector, or maybe just some guy that wants to buy your deer and have it on display because he has some type of history with that deer. Maybe, a guy that's well off and he was your neighbor, and just so happens that he has shed history for the last 3 years with that deer, and he agrees to buy you replicas for the rest of your life, but he wants the original deer that you maybe took on your side of the fence. You never know who might be interested. And in some cases it might be worth $10,000 or $50,000 to somebody. It always just kind of depends on who the offerer is and what they're offering. And but that's not the case with every big deer that's killed. And I can confidently say that, if it's a top 5 to 10 deer, you're probably not going to have a $10,000 check waiting for you, unfortunately.
Right.
But, I think for most of us, that's not what it's about anyway. But that does come into existence at times. And, I've just in the last week here, I have a good friend that took an outstanding deer a mile from my back door where we're sitting right now. That deer was killed within a mile of where I'm at, and he took it with a recurve, and it's a 200-inch deer. And it's going to be quite an impressive deer. And he just called me a little bit ago. We talked about the opportunity of potentially writing about it at North American Whitetail, and he was open to the idea. And I went and took his pictures on Friday evening, and had the opportunity to get some real good pictures and really document, such a special animal, man. It just such an unbelievable animal. But he killed it with a recurve bow on top of it, which is even, so to have that magnitude of an animal taken. But we were just talking on the phone. He's like, man, I'm just starting to get several messages. I've had a lot of people reach out to me, and, the guys from Outdoor Life just called me. And, that's really what got you and I talking about this, that it's a process and it can be a lot. And, he's a 38-year-old guy that, has got a pretty good business going, and he understands the art of negotiation. So there's some things there that he'd probably have a lot better position with, but still it's all pretty new to him, and didn't really know the nuances of even how to handle maybe how that coverage would be owned by somebody, an entity like ours, or maybe an entity like Outdoor Life, and was just kind of asking for some questions. But, imagine if you're like the young man that was in your youth group, 14-year-old boy, you go out and you happen to kill a 240-inch plus monster in Kansas. It's your first deer. Maybe mom and dad don't really hunt or don't have much interest in it. They don't really understand it. And now all of a sudden, just imagine being his parents and having people from all over the country sending, text messages or calling the house or sending emails, or maybe even knocking on the door and saying, hey, we would like to pay thousands of dollars, like he had in his case, for your son's deer. And, that could be pretty overwhelming.
I got news for you. If my boy ever kills deer and people are knocking, I'm like, dude, you $100, $200, whatever yeah.
It's up to you. And, you've heard people say that cliche statement of trophies in the eye of the beholder. And there's some guys out there that they'll never sell you. They'll never will sell their deer. And, like that original bone hanging on their wall or in their hands, or where they touch it means more to them than any $10,000 or $15,000 check could ever, or $5,000 or maybe $500 check, and other people, it's like, you get me a replica and I'm good to go. You can, write me a check and I'll go buy a new trailer or 4-wheeler, for the year. So it really just kind of depends situationally from person to person. And
what's even more outstanding to me is that when they choose to go down that route, and you talked about this briefly there, is the scrutiny that they catch. I mean, that kid got so many comments and emails and text messages. You're a high fence hunter and you're trying to, and I'm like, dude, I could take you to the spot he killed it. And I know for a fact it wasn't in a high fence, so shut your mouth. Like, Or even the weapon, like, oh, anybody can do it with a rifle. Really? Like,
Yeah.
I can't kill a 241-inch deer with a rifle. I promise you that. Like, I can't go out this week and do that. That's not, I mean, and the scrutiny that they catch is just ridiculous. And it drives me absolutely insane.
Yep. Yeah. It stinks. I guess the good old saying of haters gonna hate. It couldn't be any more true. You're going to have neighbors potentially. We've heard it all, man. Had neighbors that are 5 miles down the road that say, "Hey, I've had that deer on camera for the last 3 months, and all of a sudden he disappeared 2 weeks ago. You shot him 2 weeks ago on my property. You were trespassing." And unfortunately, whitetails in most cases, even the most smart and mature animals, don't live in a 200-yard circle. They're going to travel. We know that from science and data that we've collected over the years, whether it be from us or, the guys down at Mississippi State University or, go down the list. Like we know that's not the case. But I think that, it's got to the point now where we were just talking to another individual that had taken a very nice deer by bow last week. And he said the first thing he did, per recommendation of one of his good buddies that has been around a few deer taken, was call the conservation agent, have him come out, confirm the kill site. That everything was tagged properly, that, confirm the whole situation. That nobody could throw any red flags, so that he didn't get investigated. But, you hear all kinds of things. I've heard podcasts with Dustin Huff that killed, a great deer in Indiana here, the pending or potential, biggest typical taken by crossbow. And I say potential because official score has not been confirmed at panel yet, know. But I've heard stories of people telling, sending him trail cameras, pictures from miles away, legitimately over the last 2 or 3 years. People showing up and saying that, he definitely shot that deer in the headlights, and he definitely shot it with a crossbow, or a rifle, just all kinds of stuff. You don't know what's going to come out of the woodwork, but we just kind of always operate with the thought process that good intention was had and performed, and in the harvest, and there is the occasional case where there might be a little smoke.
I don't get why. Like, I remember one time as a kid, my dad telling me, if you're a true sportsman, you'll always be happy for another sportsman. Like if you really truly are a sportsman, there is no like, oh man, like, God, there will always be a joy for the other hunter. And like, dude, I mean, we're in a culture now where, oh my gosh, it drives me. And dude, even myself, I like last week, I hope he's not listening, because this is going to stir up trouble, because he has a platform that he could talk about me on. I put up a video of a new blind, and this dude gets on there saying, yeah, what happened to real sportsman skills? Now you just have a blind. You don't have to worry about concealment and hunting, and you just go sit in. And I'm like, okay, well, first off, I'm setting this up for me and my boy to hunt out of. He's 4. Like, yeah, I'm not going to go spotting stalking whitetails in Kansas with a 4-year-old. So I'm making this for my son to be able to sit in a blind with me and watch deer and hopefully shoot a deer. But not only that, why do you care how I hunt? Like, why do you care if I choose to sit in a blind or a tree stand or anything else for that matter? Like, but we're in this society where we put everyone down if they don't do things the exact way we do things. And it just drives me insane.
Yeah, it stinks, man. And, I think maybe you and I had a slight conversation about this last week. Is just, we need everybody as a hunting community. We need everybody. And, I'll be the first one to raise my hand and say, hey, there was a time when I was 18, 19, 20, 21 years old that I was a vertical bow enthusiast. I mean, to the utmost gauge, I was all the way there. And if somebody said crossbow, I was like, oh, I shook my head at them, couldn't believe it. And
you look really good for 60, by the way.
Yeah. Thank you. But I say that there was a time period that I thought that way, and I feel bad about it now. And
right.
What it took was life experience with me, because I had a grandfather that, had raised me to hunt and was a big, influence in my life, whether it was quail hunting behind his bird dogs with a 12 gauge or a 20 gauge, or whether it was bow hunting. I can remember, like, his bare bow is still hanging on the rack at his house.
Yeah.
one that he last used. And so, that was a guy that I looked up to that got me into the activity of vertical bow hunting. And he hit a point where arthritis overtook his elbow and he couldn't pull back a vertical bow anymore. And, like he hated it. He did, because it really shortened his season and something that he really enjoyed doing. And until our local family doctor had him in the office one day and was talking to him about his arthritis, and they're hunting buddies. They talk about their hunting stories every time he goes in there. And he said, "Hey, Karen, do me a favor." He said, "I'm going to write you a notice today because I know you can't pull your vertical bow back anymore." But he's like, I got a crossbow. I got an Excalibur crossbow. It's a recurve crossbow. And he's like, it's kind of like the in-between, And he said, I went and I got it. And he said, man, I was just like you not that long ago. And I went and got a crossbow. And, despite what everybody says, it got me back out into the woods and it gave me the opportunity. And, Grandpa kind of, I don't know, and then he ended up convincing himself just to go try it. And he went and got a crossbow and he started doing it, and he's back in the woods, man. And I think that so many of us, it doesn't matter the weapon, as long as it's legal, as long as it's ethical, and it allows you that opportunity to get out and connect with, Mother Nature. Not to sound like the cliche guy advocating for the outdoors, but that's the reality, especially as archers or guys that are brought up in the hunting community, guys and gals like that. That's our biggest attachment 9 times out of 10 is that, I would say, I'd like to call it intimacy that we have with the wildlife and the outdoors and what's going on when we have a stick and string in our hand, and the closeness of that whole experience. And that got him back there. And I quickly had to change my mind on things, because that was I loved and cared about, still do to this day. And he's still crossbow hunting to this day, over 10 years later, 15 years later. And, it just really opened my eyes. And I went on to work for an archery manufacturer and crossbow manufacturer. And so I get to hear a lot more stories like that is what I'm getting. Right. There's time period, like I said, I was that guy that was like, what are you doing? This is crazy. And I really wasn't thinking about, I wasn't taking myself outside of my shoes and putting myself in somebody else's shoes and walking a mile, and.
Well, and that's what, I think there needs to be that time in every hunter's life where they realize the way I do things is not the only way. And the way I do things is not necessarily the right way. Like, there is no right or wrong way to enjoy hunting. And I walked into a family get together the other day, and I was wearing a Three Rivers Archery shirt, and their slogan is traditional only. And it said traditional only. And one of my cousins, we're good friends, hunting buddies. I knew he was joking, but he looked at his son. He said, "See, son, this is what we call an elitist." And he knows good and well. He knows good and well I hunt with the compound too. But he was being funny. And I thought, you know what? That is exactly what's wrong with the hunting community, though. Not me and him. I knew he was joking. He knows. But I thought that's exactly what's wrong with the hunting community, because if somebody says traditional only, then the compound hunters get mad. And if somebody says, it's crazy, dude. Like, there's no right or wrong way to shoot a deer. Absolutely not. Just go out and enjoy hunting. Go out. It doesn't matter if you hunt from a blind or you're spotting and stalking buck naked, like my homeboy who had to make a comment. Like, it doesn't matter how you're hunting, dude. There is no right or wrong way. Get out there and enjoy hunting, and certainly don't put other people down for the way they do it.
Yeah, man. Like, I think about just that shirt where it says traditional only, and maybe we put the AL in parentheses, so it says tradition only, with the AL optional there, but it, you look at it, and to your point, man, I think we've, as a community, and this is just us today as a society, not necessarily even the hunting society, like, we have to identify with something. We always need to be attached and affiliate ourselves with something, because we feel the need. And a lot of this is social media driven. And I'm not just saying this out of my small brain. I'm saying this out of based upon, things I've read and scientific research that's been done, that we have to affiliate. And that's part of what social media drives, right? That inclusion, or, even further or deeper into the conversation, FOMO, right? The fear of missing out, whole concept that applies to so many of us. And, I quite often talk with my buddies anymore. I get philosophical at times and say, man, I love that we all want to identify with something, but I wish we could all identify with each other at the same time and just agree to disagree. We don't have to all like to bow hunt. We don't all have to like crossbow hunt. Maybe it's not for us, but it doesn't mean that we need to rain on somebody else's parade, man. They're still buying a tag that you are, and they're supporting that deer herd, in the state of Indiana or Missouri or Michigan in the way that you are. And if they haven't been introduced to vertical bow hunting or traditional bow hunting, that crossbow might be the vehicle that allows for you to have that conversation and share that passion with them at some point.
Right.
You've got a common interest already. So at the end of the day, be happy and thankful for that common interest. And, and I not to preach at anybody, I'm saying that because, man, I've gone down that road and seen how it's made me. I know how it made me feel then, and I know how I felt after I transitioned out of it. And so if I could share something with somebody, I would definitely say, hey, be open-minded, because you never know.
What me and Laden are saying is just shut your mouths and hunt. That's what we're saying.
Just hunt.
Just hunt. Well, this is truly not the way that I thought this podcast was going to go, but hey, that's fine. That's the beauty of these things. Before we move on, I have learned quickly that there are names in this world that I can trust, one of those being Muddy. I have learned early on that if it says Muddy, I can trust it. I absolutely love their tree stands. Listen, I saw a comment the other day, and it was something about a tree stand, and I'm not going to name any names, but it was like a $400 hang-on, and I'm like, yeah, or I can buy 5 Muddies for the price of that one, and why wouldn't I do that? But anyways, I know that if it says Muddy, I can trust it, from tree stands to ground blinds to trail cameras to accessories and harnesses and everything. Guys, Muddy has been around forever. They're a name you can trust. They're a name that won't break the bank either, which is what I like. So I would highly encourage you, if you're in the market for anything of the sort, go check out Muddy at gomuddy.com. There's been this topic come up on several podcasts that I've heard now. Working Class Bow Hunter and the Raised Hunting Podcast. I heard them both give this topic. So I'm not copying you. We're just going to give you the correct answers, guys. So if you're listening, don't be like, oh, Dylan's copying me. No, we just wanted to give you the right answers. So, Laden, if you had to pick, I think they did 3 days. If you had to pick any 3 days to hunt, if you had to pick any consecutive 3 days to hunt and kill a big buck, what would those 3 days be?
For me, probably 9th, 10th, and 11th of December or of November, or 10th, 11th, 12th of November. And for me, that's just I've filled several tags over the years on Veterans Day on the 11th. That's just a good day for me, it seems like. So any 3 days in that area right there. But I'll tell you, if you wouldn't have said consecutive, I would have said September 1, November 11th, December 31st.
Nice. Okay. Now, does it change? Their topic went a little further. Does it change if that's one particular buck you're trying to harvest, or if you're just trying to kill any big buck? Do those 3 days change? They do for me.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. It definitely does.
Are those dates you given for any big buck, or is that for one specific buck?
I would say any big buck. If I'm going into a new area and not familiar with a certain deer, and not trying to target a specific deer, then it's any deer. But I mean, if it's a specific deer, it's you're waiting for that perfect moment, perfect wind, perfect activity time period that based on your research and history of that animal, that when he gives you that opportunity, you want to make sure you're in the right place, whether it's September 31st or December the 2nd. You want to make sure.
My answer is, for any big buck, is November 7th, 9th, 8th, and 9th. Or actually, I'm going to change that. It would be November 8th, 9th, and 10th, because as I told you, I had a kid born on November 7th. So that's out of the picture for me. So I'm going November 8th, 9th, and 10th. Now, that's for any buck. That's for, I just want to kill a big buck. That's those days. Now, here's why. Because it's early enough in the rut to where bucks are going nuts, but there's not so many does in heat that I can't communicate with them. I can't call to them. I can't entice them. If I push it back in November, say a week, 2 weeks into November, every doe in the world is in heat. And this is for Kansas specifically, where I hunt majority. Every doe in the world is in heat. There's does running around everywhere, and bucks are chasing them around everywhere. I can call to them, doesn't matter. I can rattle, doesn't matter. I can have a decoy out, doesn't matter. They're already chasing a hot doe. Why would they leave that doe to come to me? Now, if it's early November, the bucks are getting fired up, and there's a few does that are fired up, but they're cruising and running around looking for does. So if I can make them think that I have a hot doe over here, then I can pull those bucks in. So any big deer, it's November 8th, 9th, and 10th. If I have one specific buck that I've been trying to kill, I'm going like December 20, 21st, 22nd. late in the year. It's frigid cold. It's dumping snow. Bucks are trying to put back on weight. They're hitting food sources really hard. And at that point in the game, bucks are super, super patternable because they need food. They're going to be hitting food sources consistently. So bucks are just really easy to pattern in that time of year.
For sure.
Or in the really early part of the year. But I don't like hunting in the heat, so I'm going late in the year. So yeah, if there's one specific buck that I'm trying to kill, it's going to be late in the year, and I'm going to get him over food is what's going to happen.
It's a great time of year, man. I love hunting late season and especially with my bow and arrow. And I'll tell you, it's just, I think it's a time of the season that is highly overlooked.
Absolutely.
Take, and the one risk you take is that, especially if you're hunting smaller properties or public land, is that, hey, somebody else has placed influence on that big specific deer that you're trying to chase. But it's a great time if you've got an area where you're not fighting competition and that deer stays at home pretty well. Like you said, he's already had his does. He's coming back. He's trying to rebuild that fat storage. He's underweight. He's got one thing on his mind. He's probably bedding pretty close to the food. And it's those big weather movements that are going to get him up on his feet and hit that food that you've got to hunt. So
there's also just so many, there's so many benefits too. Like I can check fresh tracks in snow.
Yep.
I mean, they're not going to be able to smell me as much because it's freezing cold. I'm not going to be smelling as much because it's freezing cold. Like there's so many benefits of hunting in that late season. And a lot of guys, they get past the rut and they're like, oh man, the rut's over. That was a fun year. Dude, it's just now getting the best time.
Oh yeah.
I don't want to speak this into existence too early because it just happened today, but dude, I'm so freaking excited about this. You can't even imagine. I think I'm going to be hunting whitetails in December with Chuck Adams.
Really?
I think.
Man.
There's like a 90% chance. We were talking and he's like, yeah, I don't really have any good whitetail hunts this year. And I'm like, well, dude, Liberty Ranch is my outfit in Oklahoma. Let's go, dude. Late season, let's hit it. And so I think we're going to try to make that happen. But that's why. He's like, well, hey, I'm done November 10th. I can be there anytime after that. Let's hit the rut. And I'm like, dude, I'm not going to try to tell Chuck Adams what to do. Because I'll hunt when you want to hunt.
Come on, Chuck. Come on.
But I'm like, dude, in Oklahoma, trust me, man. Late season is king. Because it's fun hunting in the rut. Don't get me wrong. It's a blast. You can call them, you can watch them. They're running everywhere. They're going nuts. But if you really want to nail down a big buck, dude, the late season is the time to do it.
For sure. Yeah, it's a great time. I'm telling you, South Dakota is a place that I love to go. Western South Dakota is a place that I love to go in the late season because you can see a long ways. You can put eyeballs on deer. You can find that buck, and then you can put the story together on them. And we've had some hunts over the years hunting that way, specifically with bow and arrow in December. And back home, man, we get 2 tags in the state of Missouri, and if I didn't put it together, during the early season, I'm still hunting those deer in December and even into January. Our season ends January 15th. And
now my favorite time in Missouri, I always schedule Missouri, December 5th through the 10th. Because I really like in Missouri hitting that second rut.
The second rut, yeah.
Seems like that first week of December, man, you'll always, if you start throwing some soft grunts out there, some weary grunts man, I'm tired, but I'm trying to nail her down. Seems like you always find that buck that'll come into that. And so I shot a buck last year in Missouri with my recurve. That time called him in perfect. I mean, I love that time in Missouri. It doesn't get as frigid cold and now up where you are, it does, but I hunt in South Missouri, the southernmost part of Missouri. So you don't get those crazy winters. And December, first, second week of December, I love Missouri.
Oh, it's good, man. It's a good time. Like I said, you get those does that didn't get bred first cycle or maybe a late cycle doe that is coming around, or younger does that just their cycles are off because of when they were born. I've seen some crazy action in the first week of December, and a lot of times you'll see it on your cameras, man. You'll see that action pick up, and all of a sudden there's bucks hitting scrapes again, around that time period that you just stated. And if that's the case, hey, it's not like the full blown rut's on again. But if you've got guys hitting scrapes and you can see bucks chasing does in your trail camera, it's a sequence of the seek phase, Get out there. It's a great opportunity to capitalize on what's going on in, the deer's ecosystem. And if you're lucky enough to have that going on your property, man, go capitalize.
Well, that's what, like, I don't remember when it was. I don't know, maybe like 2018. I was in Missouri and I see a buck full on chasing a doe, and I'm like, what in the heck? And it's that time. It's like December 10th, 11th. I'm like, what in the heck? Like, he's full on chasing. And you can sometimes trick yourself into thinking like, oh, it's full blown rut. Right. But don't trick yourself into thinking that. Just trick yourself into thinking, man, there was a couple hot does left and it got that buck fired up. And if I can tell the other deer in the area that there's a couple hot does left, then I'll pull those bucks in.
Yeah. It's a cool time because you never know. Just in the way that deer work, you never know what deer is going to be cruising through on his way to seek out a new food source or whatever it might be there in December, and he happens to catch wind of her trail or catch wind of her, or see and audibly, take a cue, hearing the sound of a chase phase, or process where bucks tending right, and he sees, all the activity. They'll visually cue in too, and they'll do that.
I have no science behind this, none at all. But I don't rattle that time of year, because I think it can be a deterrent to bucks sometimes because they're so tired, they're so weak, they're so just beat down from the full rut, that a fight almost pushes them. They're like, I don't want to fight. Like I don't have the energy. I can't exhort that much into that. And so I don't rattle in that time of year. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe somebody can shed some light, but I just think, bucks are tired and they want easy sex. They don't want to have to fight over it.
Now, I think there's a lot of, I'd say there's a lot of credibility to what you're saying. And I would say that because, to your point, you don't know what the herd dynamics are there at that point in time. You don't know who's moved in that's a more dominant deer. You don't know, what deer that already is existing right there in that social herd that has kicked its butt. You might have a great 4-year-old, but there's a 6-year-old around there that whoops up on him every time he comes around. Yeah. And, maybe you're queuing in on that 4-year-old or that 3-year-old because that's your target buck, and you rattle and he decides, enough of that. He's already kicked my butt. I'm going to go hang out on the next 80.
Yeah.
And so it's not a bad thing. You usually those deer have pretty, I would say, readable body language in most cases. And I would say you've probably built that opinion off a little bit of experience.
Yeah. Now I will say, like during, and I also didn't think this was going to go to late season hunt tactics, but it did. During the full rut, I'll use a posturing decoy, a postured up Dave Smith decoy. It's what I love using during the full rut. Now, again, I don't want to have a super aggressive looking buck out in late season, so I pull that decoy. I don't use that come December, because again, I don't want a buck to see that from a long way off and think I'm about to go whoop this guy's tail. Yeah. But what I use is the Montana decoys, little pop up, like the little flag decoys, and I'll use a buck with a doe laying down beside him. And now that other buck, all he sees is, man, he still has a doe with him. Like he still has a doe bedded up. I'm going to go get that doe. So just a couple things to note, man, like to remember for the late season. We're a long way from late season. There's a lot of hunting between now and then, but
a lot of hunting, but I love it.
Yeah.
Your point.
Yeah, man.
And there's another cool, and I think you know Danny Ferris, Ultimate Predator Decoys?
I do, yeah.
Okay, so Danny's a good buddy of mine. He used to work at, work for the parent company of Outdoor Sportsman Group, and worked at Bowhunter Magazine, and still is involved in some regards, but he owns Ultimate Predator Decoys. And, I'm not the only one that's seen his hunting tactics as of recent with his decoys, but I started to use them the last couple of years. And one of the best hunts I had was about the second week of December. Into the first week, I just come back from South Dakota, and unfortunately was unsuccessful there, but came back, and Danny and I'd been talking. I was like, you know what? I'll go try it. I've got a 3D decoy that I set out in the field. I set up in the fence row under a cedar tree, had a tending buck set up on the stake behind me. And then I had, actually it was a camera tripod. And then I had a doe decoy on my bow with bow pod on my bow. And I set up there and thought, we'll see how it goes. And so I put that out on the edge of a big bean field that could be seen from, about a quarter mile around. And I hadn't been sitting there for 20 minutes. And all of a sudden here came a 2-year-old, and that 2-year-old circled right out. I mean, just perfect, right out to where he tried to quarter on the 3D decoy, because he apparently saw that he was posturing on something, and came out, got quartered to him, giving me a broadside shot the whole way out to him. And then he turned and boom, locked into my tending buck and doe decoy on my bow. And it was like, holy smokes, it works. To your point. And there you are at 25 yards on the ground with this, this buck that has just come into the decoy set. And so that's definitely opened my mind in regards to hunting tactics, whether it be late November, early December, or even into the late season sometimes. And one of the best decoy, to the point of this, not to take away your conversation, but one of the best decoy stories I've ever heard, and I've seen it, and you might have even seen it, but it was the very first episode of North American Whitetail TV. And Greg Miller, a very accomplished bow hunter, he's hunted all over the East and the Midwest and the Prairie States, but he went out to Wyoming, and he was hunting early season, September 1. And he actually used a decoy to draw the attention, a 3D decoy to draw the attention of these deer into an area that he could only get a tree stand up in this one specific area. He couldn't get it all the way over to where they were at. And so he thought, I'll try a decoy, get a setup, and they're curious animals by nature. Let's see if by chance they come to my decoy. And they did. And he killed a really nice buck September, the first week of September, with a decoy.
Wow.
Just by playing on their curiosity, So
yeah. No, that leads me to a new topic, but before we get there, I got to give a shout out to my friends over at Season Report. Laden, I would highly encourage you to do a whole write-up on Season Report because it's absolutely phenomenal. SeasonReport.com is an online hunting almanac for all things hunting. You can log in and save down to the county where you hunt. And you can see all of the rules, laws, regulations, bag limits, season dates. You can see everything for that county on one easy to use, easy to understand platform. My favorite thing about it is I can see it on a calendar view. So I can look at Season Report and pull up all the counties I hunt in. And on a calendar view, I can look at when season dates overlap and what states they overlap in, down to what weapon they overlap in. So I know, oh man, rifle season just opened, I got to wear my orange. Or I can see, I don't need to go to Oklahoma today because Kansas. I can look at everything next to each other. No more clunky state agency websites, all on one easy to use, easy to understand platform. That's seasonreport.com. And it's just $10 for the entire stinking year. It's the best $10 you'll ever spend on hunting. Use code all caps hunting 101 to get that entire platform for just $10 a year. I use it literally every day during hunting season. So I would highly recommend you to go check it out. Laden, what is that number one thing that I had doubts about it, but it stinking works in hunting? Like you said that about a decoy, like, man, this works. Like I've had that so many times, like about, dude, I had so many doubts about this, but holy crap, it works.
Yeah, I would tell you two things, and they're both scent related. Both things are scent related, and there's
mine is too.
Yeah. Okay. So I look at it, and the first one, and man, I hear so many talk about this tool specifically, and that's an ozonics unit. And I was a huge skeptic of it, and just didn't man, you're talking about spending half what I did on a bow or 1/3 of what I did on a bow, depending on the model or unit you're buying. And I just could never get myself convinced to do it. And I had a buddy that was like, look, man, I'm telling you, it works. The second you see it work, that aha moment, you're never going to go to the woods without one again. And he let me borrow his for a week. And I took it out the very first night, was hunting a spot that I was very familiar with. There was a matriarch doe on the farm that had her own little social group of 5 other does and a couple fawns. And they walked directly downwind of me. And I hadn't been in the stand for 30 minutes. It's September the 15th. It's, 90 degrees here in the state of Missouri. I've been sweating all over the place. And I'm not going to say they were directly in my downward scent path, but they were in my scent cone for quite some time. And there was no way that they didn't have an opportunity to smell me. And I saw her come from 100 yards right to the base of the stand at one point, and she could smell like something wasn't quite right, but she wasn't blowing. And she'd stick her nose up, and do what they do, lick her nose and try to clean things up a little bit and get a better whiff of what was going on and moisturize her nose a little bit. And she never spooked. She never blew. And that was the old girl that for 2 straight years, every time I had a new stand and she figured out I was there, she would blow until I moved the stand. Right.
So I'm just curious why you didn't put an arrow in her yet.
Well, I was hunting a specific buck, and I saw him that night. And so I was trying not to screw it up. But to your point, I missed
if she blows, she goes, dude.
That's exactly right. She should have been already. But that for me was like, hey, a lot of guys talk about big mature bucks, but big mature does can be just as
oh my gosh,
the world going on,
if not more. If not more.
Yeah, if not more, because they don't cruise. 9 times out of 10, they don't leave that 80 acres. They're there to do every aspect of it, every corner of it. And so that has been a big thing. And that, full disclosure, hey, at North American Whitetail TV, they are a sponsor, but I'm telling you, if I don't go to the woods with that and a stick of Evercom, that's another thing that I've employed that, I've heard people talk about nose jammer, but I've not had too much experience with nose jammer yet. I'd like to try it at some point.
That was going to be mine.
Was it?
It's going to be mine.
Yeah.
So I grew up, man, and you probably did too. I grew up being like drilled into like, you take a shower, you wash your hair, you wash your peaks and your crevices, you wash everything you've got. And then you don't wear your boots, put them in the back of the truck, drive out there. You never get gas. You never dude, my dad was a scent freak. And so that was drilled into me. So the idea of adding scent, especially something that smells so freaking good, the idea of adding scent freaked me out. And I had a buddy, this was just last year. Like, this wasn't years ago. This was just last year. And I am not sponsored by Nose Jammer whatsoever. But I had this bad wind and I just couldn't figure out this tree stand. He's like, dude, jam them. I'm like, dude, shut up. Like, get out of here with that crap. And he's like, dude, and he's a big buck killer, like always kills big deer. And he's like, I'm telling you, do it. And I'm like, okay, I'll try it. But if these deer freak out and run, dude, it's on you. And so I sprayed it, and it's a lot like the ozonics. Mm-hmm. They could tell, like, listen, you're never going to fully trick a deer's nose. Like, if they hang out long enough and they're going to catch something. But what I view nose jammer as is not 100% I can do whatever I want, but it's a wind insurance. If they get downwind of me, it might give me the extra time I need for them to smell through the nose jammer to get my scent.
Yep.
So it gives me that extra time to get an arrow in them if I need to.
Yep.
But it was like that for me. It's like, holy crap, this works. Now my wife gets mad because my entire office, truck, everything smells like nose jammer because I just sprayed everywhere. Now the other thing for me was peeing from my tree. And I'm actually like I preach this, like if you've listened to this show at all, I tell you to pee from your tree. Because same way, dude, I used to carry in Gatorade bottles and, carry them out and then forget them in the tree for a year. And then you get up there and like, dude, I was like, that was the kind of freak that I grew up as a scent guy. Yeah. And then like I was hunting with this guy, and again, known big buck killer, like kills big deer all the time. And we're sitting in a blind, and he turns around, whips it out, and pees in the blind. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I'm freaking out. And he's like, I mean, what am I doing? Like, not only does this not hurt us, this helps us. And I'm like, huh? And so he's like, yeah, don't worry about it. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And so sure enough, dude, I started peeing from my tree, and it was like, aha, this doesn't kill the deer. Like, this doesn't spook them all out of the country. In fact, I've had deer come in while I'm peeing because this is bro science, and it's actually been disproved on this podcast. Are you familiar with Dr. Carl Miller from the University of Georgia?
Yes. Yeah.
He told me I was dead wrong, but I don't care. Because I've actually had deer come in to the sound of my pee hitting the ground. And to them, they just think something's peeing in the area. Like, it sounds to them like something's peeing. They don't know it's a human. But this is where Carl disproved me, was that I heard, and I thought it was QDMA that put out the article. I was wrong. But that like 80% of all your pee is ammonia at time of pee, and a deer's pee is 80% ammonia. So all the deer smells is something has peed in this area. It doesn't know that it's you. It doesn't know that it's not a buck. He did disprove that, but still, I think it.
What was Dr. Carl's recommendation on that? Did he say, "Hey, don't do it," or did he say, "Hey, just it's okay to do"? Maybe your facts behind your bro science didn't just quite accurate.
No, yeah, 100%. He said it's absolutely not going to hurt you because a deer doesn't tell, like, it doesn't smell in like predator pee and deer pee. All it smells is pee. But he said it's not going to help you in the sense of, oh, that was a buck that peed here. Yeah. They're going to know it wasn't a buck. They're going to know it wasn't a deer. But it's not ever going to hurt you in the form of like, oh, that's a human pee. Like, get out of here.
Yeah, they associate that with danger in that regard.
Yeah. Though, I mean, it's like, do you know how many predators pee in the woods? Like, I mean, coyotes pee. It's not like they smell coyote pee and bolt. I mean, it's not like they smell, I mean, so.
Your covers over the years. It's raccoon pee, it's fox pee, it's raccoon urine or fox urine, whatever, whatever wildlife research might be making at that point in time or has made over the years. There's a lot of cover scents that have come from the urine of other animals too. So.
Yeah.
They are animals, they're not bipedal men running around all over the place, but
right.
My experience has been, it has not hurt me. Now, if I went and ate a bunch of asparagus or drank, a thermos full of coffee, that's all I had in my system. It'd be interesting to see how they interact. I'm actually, as I think about this might be a great little experiment for us to perform here at North American Whitetail, or call Dr. Deere or Dr. Kroll down at Stephen F. Austin and say, hey, have you tried this yet? If not, let's do it and document it. But
yeah,
that'd be a cool one. That'd be a cool one to run with.
I would love to see it, man, because I've promoted it for a long time. Like, pee from your tree as much as you can.
Yep.
Now, I think I might be wrong. You might even be wearing a hoodie. What's your hoodie?
It's just a lacrosse hoodie here.
Oh, dang it. See, I thought it was an Alps Outdoors hoodie.
No, I do have some Alps Outdoors hoodies, though,
it
too.
Looks a lot like it. We have a shared love for Alps.
Oh, yeah.
First off, like, dude, the everyday carry backpack, the business pack. Oh, my gosh. Greatest thing ever made.
Yep.
I ask you that. Going into the whitetail woods, we're kicking it off. I was just now, I've had a couple sets with my boys, so not super serious sets by any means. We were playing monster trucks in the dirt most of the time. But the reason I ask is because I was just setting my pack up. What do you carry in your whitetail pack?
Oh, man. I already told you Ozonics. Ozonics is there. I'm always carrying that, carrying a little Evercom. I'm carrying a grunt call that, has an adjustable reed that I could, transition to a doe bleat or doe grunt if wanted. Tree hooks, got to have tree hooks, accessory hooks. Man, what else? I've got a little book. I told you about this the other day. I've got a little book that my boys made for me for Father's Day here a few years back. That's, it's like 30 pages of tell dad why he's great and what you think about him kind of stuff. And it's, this size, that's kind of my little good luck charm I like to carry with me. Definitely have to have my knife. You got to have your knives. You got to have your field dressing kit to go with you. And I like to, you'd think as involved as we are in our magazine that I would know the magazines from, back cover to front cover to back cover. But I usually try to catch up on North American Whitetail or a gun dog or a wildfowl, or we've got North American elk as well. So that's usually a nice little time where I can get away from the screen and sit there. And if, I'm not in a stand where I'm exposed, if I'm sitting in a blind, might have a little time to catch up on some articles and just, make sure I'm taking in everything that Dr. Kroll or Gordon or Haynes or Blake or whoever might be writing about. So those things, binoculars, rangefinder, man, trying to think of what else. Releases, got to have my releases. And an extra.
You haven't even said snacks yet, bro.
I'm getting there. Gloves and snacks.
That's first. Snacks are first.
Got to have some snacks. You just got to have the right snacks, man.
Actually, I take that back. Snacks can't be first because then they're in the bottom of the pack.
They gotta be
at the top.
You read my mind, but
they got to be at the top. Number one tree stand snack.
Jeez.
Uncrustables.
See, I'm a little Debbie punk, man, and it's hard on me because the older I get, the more I try to lay off the sugar, and I've kind of transitioned to beef jerky or deer jerky a little bit more, and trying to stay a little healthier with it. But gosh, it's hard to leave little Debbie out of my pack.
Okay.
Yeah.
I understand. Have you ever had Uncrustables though? Oh,
Uncrustables are great. They're in our freezer right now. I've got 3 little boys, all under the age of 10. So don't think we don't have Uncrustables and Hot Pockets in the freezer.
Yeah. One time I got in trouble. I was headed out. I was going down to Oklahoma for 4 or 5 days, and I just grabbed the whole box, like from Sam's industrial box of Uncrustables, and left. And I quickly got a phone call from my wife. She's like, "Are you serious? I got to get the kids ready for school every day, and you just took their whole lunch for the next week and a half." And I'm like, well, it's my lunch for the next week and a half too, sweetheart. So,
yep. And I'll tell you the other great thing that the kids eat all the time are these little applesauce squeeze packs. Have you seen?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh my,
Oh yeah.
those things are awesome because then I'm not stealing their Go-Gurt or, like Trix yogurt or anything along those lines. I've got applesauce that 100% healthy and organic, and I take them right out and they fit into the pack. They're quiet. That's another great snack if you're not using those applesauce squeeze containers.
Now, pro tip, you have to, on an Uncrustable, you mentioned quiet. On an Uncrustable, you got to take them out of the package. They come in and put them in a Ziploc bag. Because those packages will kill you. Trust me, like I've been there, done that. But sometimes the snacks are more important than the deer. Laden, I ask every single one of my guests, Fred Barrow's big on his field notes. So what's one tip you have for us, one quick field note that you've learned over the years that I can take and make myself a better hunter with?
Pay attention. And that's something that has taken, a little bit of maturity. I'm a long ways from being mature, but it's taken a little bit of maturity to start taking note of, is just pay attention. And, you probably laugh at me, but I've been bow hunting now since the age of 16, 15. So it was just before I turned 16 that I first went out and started bow hunting. And it took me almost 15 years to notice like native browse. Walking through the timber, and I was hunting a piece of public ground in Nebraska with my bow. It was 5.5 years ago. I guess it'd be 5 years ago this season. And man, I was standing in an area and I was off the edge of an alfalfa field that was actually on that walk-in ground. I was like, man, why are they not coming to the alfalfa in September? I just can't get it. I don't understand it. And I'm standing there just beating myself up on this piece of public ground. And I just kind of look down and I see whatever that little shoot was that was growing in that part of the timber. And man, it's like, oh, it's been browsed on. Huh. I start looking around and everywhere around me, it's all browsed off. And I went, oh, light bulb. And it just made me think, man, so many times I have walked, because as deer hunters, unfortunately, the media, in some cases, we talk about the very attractive things.
It's your fault.
Yeah, 100%. We are. We talk about the alfalfa, and we talk about the soybeans, and we talk about, the mineral, or we talk about the, whatever supplemental feed it might be. And we so often overlook the native components of forage that, just take place, or acorns. We'll talk about acorns, but we'll talk about, a nice tender shoot that comes up. And so it just like light bulb. I went, man, for years I've overlooked that. And sure enough, I sat there the next morning and there were does everywhere. And, and I wasn't 150 yards from where I was. I was just down below it in the bottom. And that's where they wanted to be. They wanted to feed on that native browse right there. And so I say that to say, hey, pay attention. Make sure that you're taking in your surroundings. When you get into an area and you watch a deer, 9 times out of 10, what they're doing, probably 9.99 times out of 10, they do out of intention. So pay attention to the way that they've got their nose in the air when they walk into the field, the direction that they approach that field into, what way the wind's blowing, what the temperature is like all those little things can help you put the puzzles together on a big, whitetail or mule deer or elk a lot quicker if you'll take the time to take note, and maybe even literally take notes on what you're seeing.
Yeah. Deer are creatures of habit. And sometimes people don't get that. Like I was explaining it to somebody like this. They're a new hunter and they were asking where to hunt early season versus late season, or middle of the rut, that type of thing. Like, where do I hunt on my property? And I just told them this. I'm like, listen, if you want to kill a human, like if you were hunting humans, you would not go to the beach on Christmas Day. No, because it's going to be freezing cold. Nobody's going to the beach. However, if you want to kill a human and you go to the beach in the summer, you got a plethora. Right. Same is true. Same is true for, if I wanted to kill a white girl, I would go to Starbucks at 7:30 a.m. That would be where I would go. I wouldn't necessarily go at 2 p.m. because they've already got their coffee and went to work. Think about it like that with deer. Deer aren't that much different than humans. They need the same things we need. They need food, water, and shelter. Right. So they're going to be focused on those three things. And then if you think about it, I just try not to overcomplicate it. And I think, man, if I get done with a big workout or a big run or whatever, first thing I want to do is go eat because I'm hungry. I'm depleted. I need food in me. The same as now we're talking about, earlier we were talking about late season. The same is true for a deer. They just got done with a month-long workout and fighting and running and having sex and crazy amounts of energy for a month straight. The only thing they want to do is eat. So go to where they're eating. If it's pouring snow, think about where you would be. You'll be shacked up in your house. A lot of times deer are going to be shacked up. Oh, I was going to say that you mentioned that story about being able to see a long ways off in South Dakota. I actually really like, if you're a steel hunter or a spot and stock hunter, those late season times are phenomenal because you can see deer bedded down a lot better because they're not bedded down in brown stuff. They're bedded down in white stuff. So you can see them a lot better. And then you can walk a lot quieter. You can move a lot quieter on snow. So, again, I got off track there, but,
okay. To that same point though, I would tell you, like, you're talking about one of the big things I learned out there was, hey, when I first got out there, I was so, itching to send that first arrow through a mule deer that, like, hey, I saw a buck. I went after buck. I didn't stop and say, okay, wait, time out. Look at that buck. What are his surroundings? Where's the wind? What's he bedded by? How's he bedded relative to other deer? And that's something that over time, I started to learn, like, hey, when I'm out there hunting mature bucks, 9 times out of 10, they're bedded with the wind at their back and where they can see out in front of them. So they can cover themselves from behind with their nose. They can cover themselves in front with their eyes. So how does that dictate how you approach? Well, you can't approach them from behind because they're going to smell you before they ever see you. You can't approach them from in front because unless you have a landscape advantage, because they're going to see you before you ever get to within bow range. And so maybe it's a lateral move or it's a 45-degree angle where you can maintain that wind direction, yet stay out of sight for them, and so there's a lot of things, and you can learn a lot about what's going on. So you see that first big buck and you see that, he's bedded in that area. Let's say it's a south facing hill at that point in time. It's December, right? It's probably gonna be a south facing hill. But you also see what he when he gets up, what's the first thing he browses on? And is that a plant that you see a lot of, or maybe you just see little bits, and that's why he's there, because he can get up, browse in security right there by it, and then he'll move to that destination food source. So there's a lot of things to your point, my point, that hey, pay attention, take note of what's going on, because you can learn a lot without ever having to go through the process of messing it all up, before you learn.
Right. You learn more from the bucks that you screw up than the bucks you kill by far. You normally don't learn a lot of stuff from deer that you kill. You normally don't. Because what you're doing when you kill them is you're implementing what you learned on the last ones that you messed up. But man, when I come home and I'm like, dang it, dude, I saw 3 deer and I blew them all out. Like, I messed them all up. Like, then you're like, well, maybe this is why. Maybe this is what happened, maybe. And so you start adding all those things up, and then you put them all together and you kill a big buck.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Guys, before we go, I am picky about the nonprofits that I support, but the John V. Mesh Memorial Scholarship is certainly one of those. John V. Mesh was a firefighter in the Kansas City area. Shout out Missouri. Firefighter in the Kansas City area, died in the line of duty. He had a strong passion for getting kids involved in the outdoors. So his brothers started a nonprofit to host these events around the country to get kids started in the outdoors and to raise money for their scholarship, which is going to send one kid through college who's pursuing a career in conservation or law enforcement or park rangers, things of the sort. So guys, I would highly encourage you to check out the John V. Mesh Memorial Scholarship at johnvmesh.org. Laden, thank you so much for coming on, my friend. It is always a pleasure, always a joy to talk whitetails for sure.
Oh man, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And to the point of what you just said, it's always a pleasure to spend some time with you, man. Thank you for the support and everything that you're doing to help share the message of North American Whitetail. And
now, before they go, where can they find North American Whitetail?
So NorthAmericanWhitetail.com. You can go to our Instagram page, our Facebook page. You can catch us on the Sportsman's Channel or Outdoor Channel as far as TV goes. We just signed a distribution agreement last year. The networks did with Hulu. So we're the official outdoor networks of Hulu Live Plus or Plus Live. I got that backwards the first time. So you can catch Sportsman's Channel, not only North American Whitetail TV, but any of the folks that are producing outdoor television on those 2 networks, the Sportsman's Channel or Outdoor Channel. And if you happen to be north of the border, catch us on Sportsman's Channel Canada as well. So
very cool.
Appreciate it.
You're not a Missouri fan, are you? Football fan?
I am. It was a rough weekend, man. It was a good weekend, but it was a rough weekend.
That's disgusting. That's disgusting.
Actually, I'm a Mizzou alum as well. So.
Oh my gosh! See, I actually grew up, born and raised in Northwest Arkansas, so I'm a Razorback through and through. So I absolutely love buying tickets to the Missouri-Arkansas game.
Oh yeah.
Last year we just laid it to you.
That
was fun.
You did.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm just glad to hear you're not a Jayhawk fan, man.
no, not at
I
all.
love Razorbacks, not Jayhawks.
Not at all, man. I live in Jayhawk country, but not at all, dude. My father-in-law is a Jayhawk, and you never hear. Dude, they're the worst fans in college, like by far.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy, man? They're 5-0 right now. Their football team's 5-0.
My gosh, they can shove it.
I know. I'm checking to make sure that hell hasn't froze over, or the pigs aren't flying, or that the world's coming to an end, because it's crazy.
Now listen, this is not a sports podcast, but if you're a Jayhawks fan, don't ever listen to this podcast again. No, I'm just kidding. No,
we love it all the same.
Yeah, we absolutely do, and especially after we talked about not putting each other down. So
that's right. That's what I said. We love
all right. Yeah. Guys, thanks for listening. You guys have a great week, and can't wait to watch the Jayhawks fall next week.
There you go.